Welcome to the Metaverse Memo. In this memo, we are going to share with you our point of view about the future of the immersive internet. My name is Theresa. I am an artist and a researcher at Comata, and I'm going to be moderating the conversation today. With me are Severin and Mike, who are going to introduce themselves briefly.
Hello, I'm Severin. I'm the founder of Comata, a researcher, strategist, and editor.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm a researcher and strategist, and I also work closely with Theresa and Severin.
Great. Let's dive right in. Will the metaverse connect us in unprecedented ways?
What a great question, Theresa. Thank you for asking that. My answer is yes and no. What we see in our research and what we've known before by publishing reports such as the post-social media report is that the past 30 years of the internet, or especially the last 20 years of social networks and social media, had this paradox effect of both connecting us much more in unprecedented ways. So basically, like the same promise that the metaverse has today, social media had 20 years ago, which was like connect with more people, be less lonely, and have fun on the internet. And what we see, for example, through stats as we have here, is that the decline in friendship over the last 30 years has dramatically increased. So less men and women across the US and probably across the world have less close friends than they did 30 years ago. I can't say for sure what social media or the internet had to do with that, but we definitely see this loneliness crisis that we have basically discussed multiple times over the last few years across the media and in everywhere, that we feel somehow super connected and at the same time really lonely. So the promise of the metaverse is very much like, are these gonna be these so-called third places? So what are third places? Third places is this concept basically promoted by the sociologist Ray Oldenburg, where he defines a third place as a place that's neither work nor home. So somehow these third places that are neutral, where you don't go for work, where you don't go to spend time with your family, but you kind of like are in a neutral space, like in a bowling alley, a community center, church, places like that, where we come together and we have the opportunity to meet people outside our normal social circles. So according to Ray Oldenburg, and also according to other authors such as, for example, Robert D. Putnam, who wrote Bowling Alone in the early 2000s, we are being deprived of these third spaces in real life. So there's less and less community centers, there's less and less neutral spaces out there where people can just meet without having a strict commercial or work purpose. And so we go online to find these places. Unfortunately, what we've seen through the commercialization of the internet over the last 20 years, also online, there's hardly any third place out there anymore. Every space we basically hang out in and connect with other people is hyper commercialized and driven by financial interests. So the idea is, are these going to be the third places? And I think the answer is no. um, ah, Actually, I lost my point here a little bit. Well, Theresa, help me out.
Should we move on to the next question? And we'll come back to some of
No,
the.
no, I think I'll just continue then. I think like the third place discussion is a whole thing around the metaverse as well. But I think what the point that I wanted to make here is, why do people feel lonely and isolated? And I think we can of course look at further context, not just like the loss of third places, but the pandemic, which isolated all of us at home to large degrees, 18 years of social media, algorithm cultures and filter bubbles, which basically made our feeds hyper personal and individualized. The economy, the planetary crisis, there's lots of factors that actually make us feel a little bit lost and alone. And so there's no surprise that when we talk about the metaverse and digital virtual spaces, young people are just like, give us a break. We just want to hang out online. We don't want to be reminded about all the problems that we have nothing to do with. So when you ask people, Gen Z especially, or Gen Alpha, about what they are doing in the metaverse, their answers are like this. This is a recent survey by Dazed and Confused or Dazed Studio. The main purpose for people to go online in the metaverse is to connect with people in an online space, followed by the desire to escape reality, followed by the desire to play games. So basically, like this kind of like escapism, looking for third places to connect with people in an online space, is very much driven by the current behavior in the metaverse.
All right. And so tell me this, what do you guys think? Will the future look and feel like a game?
Yeah, this is a question that I've been thinking about a lot. I've done a lot of work and research this year in the gaming space, and games are fascinating in many ways. And games are fascinating because millions, tens of millions of people play these online or immersive games every day. I myself have a background as a gamer 20 years ago. I played online games. I found an incredible community and friends online already 20 years ago. So games are definitely an exciting field to look at when it comes to the future of the internet. And why I've been talking about third places in the beginning was that often in the last few years we've seen these articles where journalists stated that games like Fortnite are today's third places. What does that mean? That Fortnite or Roblox were originally conceived as games that had a very clear goal and purpose. In the example of Fortnite, it was battle royale. 100 players come together, join, and there's one winner in the end that takes home the prize. But then, as we've seen over the last few years, these gamers who played these games increasingly started to just hang out and chat to each other. So basically, you go to school in the morning, you go home, you have lunch, and then you log on to Fortnite and you just hang out with your friends. You have your microphone on, you're on Discord at the same time, and you basically just chat with a group of friends. So basically, we've seen that maybe because of the loss of third places in our physical and digital environments over the last few decades, people are trying to reclaim these spaces and come together in virtual spaces again to just hang out and chat. So we have these games that are nowadays curiously considered metaverses. I think a lot of people have heard about Roblox and Fortnite. These are basically 3D online immersive games that have been around for like 5, 10, even longer than that years. But until recently, nobody talked about these games as metaverses. Everyone was like, oh, cool, a lot of teenagers are playing Fortnite, fun, and they're hanging out, interesting. But suddenly, come 2021, 2022, everyone is talking about the metaverse, and suddenly Fortnite is a metaverse. So the question is, on strict terms, when it comes to the definition of a metaverse, are these metaverses? And my answer is yes and no. They are metaverses in a sense that they are virtual spaces. They exist continuously live and for everyone simultaneously, which is an important definition of the metaverse. And these games definitely purport a real sense of identity, connection, play, and cooperation. At the same time, these games are not interoperable, so each is a walled garden with identities and assets only having value within Fortnite or within Roblox. There's no real economy there. You can't really own anything. You can't create, invest, sell, or be rewarded for your work that produces value. And these games are not fully immersive yet. So somehow these are these in-between spaces. But as we will see later, a lot of how games like Fortnite and Roblox, but also like, for example, World of Warcraft, a lot of like the ways these games work and that keep people engaged will actually be transported to new virtual spaces that might be metaverses, might be other spaces that have much different functions than just being games. So my answer to your question, Theresa, is yes, the future will look and feel like a game in many ways that we can't even imagine yet.
All right, thank you. And how would you answer this question? Who owns the metaverse?
Yeah, I feel like I'm talking all the time, but Mike is going to have his moment very soon. um, and feel free to chip in, Mike, when it comes to that question, because I think this is something we've been researching a lot. Um, we don't know yet who owns the metaverse, but obviously the race to own the metaverse is on. Like everyone wants to have a piece of the puzzle. So when we look at brands and entertainment, for example, what we've seen right now, especially in 2022, is that big brands are entering these metaverses. So we have Walmart Land on Roblox, Spotify Island on Roblox, Gucci Town on Roblox. We have big concerts by the likes of Ariana Grande and Travis Scott on Fortnite, with Balenciaga making official partnerships with Fortnite to create skins inside the game. So what I find interesting about it is that we are somehow in this weird era right now where all the budget that brands have been putting into social media over the last decade is still somehow, being put in, but also social media doesn't really deliver the same results as it did before. And it also changed a lot through TikTok and algorithms over the last few years. So I feel like every CEO of the world has heard of the metaverse right now and is basically telling their teams, we gotta do something there. And it makes sense because if millions of people play these games every day and you are a brand like Walmart or Spotify with a very broad audience, you want to do something to reach those people. It makes a lot of sense that these brands are coming onto these metaverses right now. And these metaverses are also like obviously smelling the taste of like, oh wow, these are amazing opportunities for monetization, of course. What I find less interesting though is like what's actually happening there. Like what they are doing is basically fun and games in the metaverse. So Spotify is putting on some like fun little games for people to play around, and Gucci Town is giving people like clothes to try on something. So basically, they are just replicating what they've been doing in retail or in social media, and now just adapted to these games. So I think conceptually, it's not that interesting what's happening right now. When it comes to the next layer of who owns the metaverse, we of course have the metaverses themselves. We have Meta with Horizon Worlds, we have VRChat, we have Journée coming out of Berlin. We have also fully decentralized metaverses like Decentraland and Sandbox, and metaverses that are still being built like the other side by Yuga Labs. So obviously on the infrastructure layer, a lot of stuff is being built right now. And what's interesting is that there's not so much happening. I think Mike will go more into this. But I think if I have to sum it up, we're somehow here where the dominant system, which is social media platforms of the last 20 years, are somehow coming to an end. And a new era is starting that's going to be fueled by Web3, blockchain technology, metaverse, immersive technology, etc. But we're not quite there yet. We're somehow in this transition phase where the only places where people actually spend time with are these games, and the metaverses that exist, like Decentraland and Sandbox, are there but are not that exciting yet to actually do something there. So to sum this up, talking about third places, I don't think that the metaverses of the future are going to be the third places that people are looking for. They are going to be hyper commercialized in a way that we haven't seen yet. They're going to be tokenized. They're going to run on multiple currencies, as we'll see in a bit. But they're not going to be the third places of the future. They're not going to be neutral. They're not going to have in mind that people just connect without a commercial purpose in it. So for all like the people that are looking for third places where they can, end the loneliness crisis, I don't think the metaverse is going to be it. We might be able to connect with many more people in many more interesting ways, but it's not going to be neutral and it's not going to be uncommercial.
All right. Then this one I think is more directed at Mike. What does Web3 have to do with it all?
Yeah, I think Web3 is often mentioned a lot in conjunction with the metaverse. And when we think about the metaverse and Web3 and the connection there, I mean, really it comes down to the underlying technology of Web3, which essentially enables the potential of a future metaverse. So, I think when we think about the metaverse at the moment, it's often referred to as a binary. We're either in the metaverse or we're in reality. But if we think about being online, it's not something that's static like that. We could be out in the world, taking photos for Instagram, texting with friends, looking at Google Maps on the direction to go in the street. It's something that is very much taking place alongside our lives and the interactions that we're having in the physical world around us as well. And I think this is, how we should think about the metaverse. And we currently have what we can generally refer to as multiple metaverse-like spaces or metaverses. But to really enable the metaverse with a capital M, I think we move from this discussion of these immersive virtual spaces to an additional layer that really sits on top, enabling new user behavior and interactions, right? So we think about the metaverse and we know it's going to have these kind of characteristics. It's going to be based on virtual reality or have elements of virtual reality. It's going to have elements of augmented reality. We're going to engage with the spaces through, legacy gateways such as phones, laptops, but also, future gateways, things like Google Glass, for example, or whatever version of this new technology starts to bring to life. Now, in these kind of traditional spaces that we've seen as close to metaverses, as Severin talked about, in the gaming space, for example, we have these walled gardens where users are very much engaged and interactive. Fortnite has a super engaged community there, same with Roblox or other games, and brands are very much interacting there. But with these walled gardens, the ability to take something, if a player buys something in Fortnite for their character, they're not able to take that into Roblox to carry that digital IP from space to space. Now, on the other hand, we have these kind of new decentralized metaverse projects coming to life, projects like Decentraland or the Sandbox. Um, but, up until now, we haven't really seen much engagement in these spaces. In fact, it's been disappointingly empty when we enter into these virtual worlds. If anybody's tried to actually go on to Decentraland, I'm yet to meet another person in there. And yeah, nobody wants to visit an empty metaverse ultimately. So, you know, I guess the answer is somewhere in between the two, where we need to think about how do we get an engaged community, but with some of the kind of ideas behind Web3. Now, the question obviously is why we would want to, why we would need the technology of Web3, and the answer behind that is really this idea that Web3 supercharges community engagement. So, NFT technology allows users or players to own digital items and to be able to take those digital items between different spaces and different worlds. It gives them extra utility in being able to access additional benefits through the tokens that they own. We've already seen new ways of exploring identity and belonging in Web3 through NFT projects like Pool Suite or um, Crypto Coven or many different interesting projects. But ultimately, the big one is interoperability, this ability to take digital IP from one space to another, and this is based on NFT technology. Now, we're already seeing even big players within the space. So, this talk from Adam Masari around the future of interoperability. We know that even with Instagram venturing into the NFT space, this is a big topic. So it is something that's being considered. But really, we haven't seen anything of the sort yet in terms of the metaverse space. But this is where the project Yuga Labs comes in as a potential, real, exciting opportunity within the space. So
So I have
just to
to I
give
have to
a,
correct. Sorry, I mean there are blockchain-based metaverses, right? Like Decentraland and Sandbox. So it's not just because you said I think that we haven't seen anything on that scale. So there are
I
metaverses
think
out there, right?
Yeah, what I mean is we haven't seen any examples of interoperability of metaverse projects working together with each other. Of course, there is spaces that are being built, and the example that we're about to talk about is really is something that isn't even there yet. So this idea of kind of spaces that interact with each other, this kind of metaverse, which is this additional, feels like this additional layer versus just this kind of walled garden interactive space. I don't think we've seen yet. And Yuga Labs comes along, and for those of you who need a bit of context on this, Yuga Labs is the project from the Bored Ape Yacht Club. Yuga Labs is the overarching, team behind the Bored Ape Yacht Club. So, the Bored Ape Yacht Club is one of the biggest NFT projects that we've seen in the space. It launched in 2021 with 10,000 unique NFTs. It gained in popularity very quickly, got picked up by some NFT collectors who had a certain level of notoriety. They launched additional projects such as the Bored Ape Kennel Club and the Mutant Ape Yacht Club. And, the community really started to grow. So there's mixed opinions on the Bored Ape Yacht Club as a project, but one thing that can be said is that the project comes from a team that is very interested in storytelling. They come from the gaming space. They're very interested in crafting unique narratives and having law or ideas or storylines that are kind of created in collaboration with the community. And we've seen the community engage significantly in events that they've done, such as Ape Fest. They've had celebrity endorsements from everyone from Paris Hilton to NBA players like Stephen Curry. And they've obviously had some significant brand collaborations as well. They've worked with the likes of Adidas, for example, with big NFT big digital artists in the space like Beeple. And recently they announced this project called The Other Side, which is their version of the metaverse. Now, The Other Side is interesting because what we've seen from the space so far very much looks like a game on the same level that you would see something like Fortnite. If anybody is familiar with crypto gaming, projects like Axie Infinity, um, the thing that I think a fair amount of people agree on is that the actual gaming element, what you can actually do in those spaces feels very limited. It feels very rudimentary. The Other Side looks nothing like this. It is a hi-fi, big project that feels very much like something like Fortnite, but built on blockchain technology. So to go back to this initial discussion, this initial idea, we think about Yuga Labs and we think about the space, and there's potential there to create this kind of merging of worlds, like we talked about previously, with this, active and engaged community in a virtual space that has gaming mechanics that keep the community engaged, with, the latest technology allowing for really an unparalleled user experience for the people playing there. Now, ultimately, it is yet to be seen whether the Other Side project can go beyond its crypto audience. Now, what we can see from the space, from spending time in the Discord and spending time kind of chatting to people in those spaces about the community, is that many people aren't coming from this gaming world. They're coming from the crypto space, and so we have to really wait and see how many of those people are interested in actually spending time in a place like this and actually building the lore and storylines of the space, as much as they are maybe interested in making money. As you may or may not know, Bored Ape Yacht Club is very financially successful, and so there will be many people in the space kind of thinking about this. So if we kind of take that and we look at Other Side in comparison to the rest of the space, it's really this idea of, what Severin was talking about earlier about this kind of uninteresting ideas in the metaverse where we're really seeing, things that happen in real life but being applied to a virtual space. So virtual conferences, virtual concerts. This is the kind of uninteresting brand examples that we've been seeing so far. And this is kind of this kind of non-gaming mechanics, this kind of virtual living. And in these closed spaces like Meta, where everything that you interact with only exists within that walled garden, this is where we see a potentially, commercial and yeah, frankly, not so fun space to spend our time. And we have these other spaces like Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox, which we know about, these gaming spaces where we have a hugely engaged community. They are interested because the games are interesting to play, but also because there's an opportunity to interact and hang out with their friends. But at the same time, there is an opportunity to supercharge this by opening making them decentralized, opening them up to crypto and NFT technology that will allow users a whole new level of experience where they can really create their identity and apply it across multiple virtual spaces. So, imagine being able to take your character from Fortnite into your Zoom meeting in the morning when you talk to your team. This is the opportunity that we have with platforms like Otherside, and this is where we really see the potential is taking those gaming mechanics and working on this kind of crypto technology to create something that is really unique for space.
Great. So, following on from that, as our final point of discussion, describe to me a metaverse that we would like to spend time in.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit. I think my personal story with what Mike just talked about. I've obviously been excited about Web3 for a while, but everyone who was into crypto, NFTs, and Web3 over the last year has come across Bored Ape Yacht Club and Yuga Labs, and I always regarded it as like, yeah, this purely financial driven crypto pro sort of project that eventually will blow up and go down the train. But I think, yeah, once we looked into Otherside, it really became interesting because they're really trying to marry these kind of like game mechanics with the opportunities of Web3. So, what's a metaverse we wish to spend time in? I think it is this combination. It is like the best parts that games have brought to us over the last few decades, which is world building, lore, and play, um, together with the opportunities of Web3, which allows people to have ownership over the digital assets, to play around with multiple identities, and this interoperability aspect that we can take assets from one place to another. So I think that really becomes an interesting place that is, I think, a metaverse worth spending time in, that is not just a virtual environment, a 3D environment where we don't know what to do with ourselves, like Decentraland and Sandbox are mostly nowadays, but actually spawns a new economy and new behaviors and real life implications. So this is a really interesting moment in time right now where we might not be there yet, but we will probably be there in a few years. Well, yeah, I think like Web3, whatever it's gonna become in the next few years, is gonna show us a lot of new ways of how to interact with each other online. Maybe make us less lonely. We'll see. But I think one example when people ask me, okay, but what would this world building metaverse look like? And I think I've been to this exhibition a few weeks ago in Berlin, by Ian Cheng, an artist that has written Emissary's Guide to Worlding, like one of the standard pieces about world building. And he basically created this exhibition that I thought was a perfect example of like how these future worlds might look like. So I'll guide you a little bit through the experience, because even though it was like a physical exhibition, I think it's a great example of like how virtual worlds might work in the future as well. So when you enter the exhibition, you basically have this interface portal with a screen where you enter your details. You enter your birth date and you enter your name, and you don't really know what it leads to, but then you get like a little wristband that you carry around with you for the rest of the exhibition, and you don't really know where it leads you to. And then you enter basically this huge empty space in this big factory hall, and you hang out with 100 strangers. So basically, it's like a metaverse, except that, yeah, you don't really talk to the others, but it feels like, yeah, you're just hanging out there, listening to sounds, having this little light installation, and then basically the main piece of the exhibition starts, which is a movie. You watch a movie, which is basically a 1 hour movie created in Unreal Engine, which is interesting because Unreal Engine is now, it's this 3D engine that a lot of games run on. It's now at a stage where you can produce entire movies with, which means that basically every little piece of it is entirely interchangeable and customizable, and people could potentially participate in creating its characters. So you watch this movie, which is called Life After Bob. It's a whole story about basically a universe in 100 years, and there's a wiki around it, etc. And it's kind of like watching a movie. But afterwards, you enter this other space where you can interact with the characters of the movie. So it's kind of like a wiki together with like 3D screens, and you can take out your phone and basically discover more information about the characters. And you kind of like understand that this is like an expandable universe. What you've just seen is a movie that could become another movie tomorrow or another movie in 2 years based on the characters that are in there. And I found it quite interesting that in the end, then, you can mint your own NFT as a sort of like ownership. And in this sense, it's only been a gimmick. Like a lot of people I think who went to the exhibition have never minted an NFT and don't really know what it means to own this piece of like digital infrastructure. But it worked surprisingly well that like after entering your details at the beginning, basically get this token, which is like a proof of attendance that I was Severin the Evergreen, and somehow this proved like my attendance of the exhibition. So it didn't have more utility than that. But I could imagine that in the future I might get an email and be like, hey, because you visited the exhibition and you took part in Life of the Bob, you're now invited to join in building this world further. And that actually happened. Like there was just a fan fiction context where you could submit your own fan fiction according to the Life After Bob wiki, and you could buy merchandising and so on. So I've seen a lot of like elements that probably don't make so much sense right now, but I could see that this is the beginning of a world that's being collectively built by people who have been to this exhibition, who have seen the movie, who want to join in creating like more characters for future editions of Life After Bob and future movies. So I'd say what I found exciting about it, like it had a very strong story, which I think is really a key part. It had an experience attached to it. It had ownership in the form of an NFT, and it had this co-creation part that anyone could join and create this universe. So ultimately, I think, yeah, the future spaces are gonna somehow look and feel a little bit like this experience I had in this exhibition. It reminded me of this little graph I made a few months ago, where I was looking also into like gamification and Web3 as a socio-economic operating system, where I think that the worlds of the future that we're going to enter are kind of like little games. Basically, you enter, and with the question of who do you want to become? I think a lot of our culture right now, what we see on social media and on the internet and elsewhere in popular culture, is built on aspiration. It's not about who you are right now or not who you are in real life, but who you want to become. Who do you want to try out in becoming? A lot of like, what Web 1 was like, where people create all sorts of like fake characters, fake identities, fake forum names to try out what it's being like. What if I was a woman? What if I was a cat? We had a lot of this experimentation in the early days of the web, and it kind of disappeared in the social media age of the last 20 years when everything became so connected to our real world identities. And now we see the unbundling of this again, where people create new identities, new characters within these worlds that they enter. So you create your character. There's a currency that just basically has value within this world that allows you to buy and unlock new items. You get rewarded. And at the top of the pyramid, you're so invested in this world that you enter that you want to co-create the world you inhabit, which again basically fuels your aspiration to become somebody, to have certain status in this world and so on. So I think this might sound, I don't know, Mike and Theresa, does this sound very abstract to you? Or does it somehow make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. I think this is exactly, exactly the ingredients that we will see in terms of creating a model that gets people engaged within the space, and we've already seen some of these mechanics come to life in very successful ways, in NFT projects, or Web3 projects in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think we definitely also researched some of those that we didn't get into yet. But yeah, maybe to summarize our common analysis after we've deep dived into the metaverse for this project that we've worked on, I kind of like see the future as basically like these little slot machines that we probably all know from our childhoods. Where basically you enter a coin, you turn it around, you get a piece, you don't know what's inside, and you immerse yourself. Well, basically it was a piece of chewing gum back then. We didn't really immerse ourselves in chewing gum. But I kind of like see that we're entering these worlds that have their own value systems, their own identities that are interoperable, and we basically like fall down in a rabbit hole like Alice used to be in Alice in Wonderland. So that's kind of like the metaverses I think we'll see in the next 10 years or so. And I'm very excited about it because these are definitely places I would like to spend time in, and explore and find new ways of shaping my identity, find new ways of like shaping kind of like life shaping experiences together with other people online. I think that's a exciting promise of the future internet, and I hope it's going to become a reality at some point.
I think that's a really nice place to end. We're excited about the future. Thank you so
Yes.
much. Thank you to everyone joining
Thank
us.
you.
Follow us at comatter.com, and if you want to have the full board, just go to the link in the description.
Thank you, Theresa, for moderating. It was a lot of fun.
All right.
Thank you.